Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Works down by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in on this Thursday. Another big Thursday. Chris Denari joining us at the top of the hour here. Pacers win so special, we had to get him in early today, here early in the season. So, Chris joining us early. Chris, how you doing? Dustin Schutte with us as always as well. Dustin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Jim, how are you?
Wonderful. Chris, are you on the road or are you?
No.
I didn't know if that game was at home last night. I don't remember.
Yeah, we had a home game, and then we have a home game tomorrow. I just have a television meeting in my normal spot. Usually, I'm on with you guys about 10 o'clock, but we have we've got a television meeting with our Valley Sports partner today. So that's why I'm on a little bit early, but always good to do the show every Thursday morning.
Man, we appreciate you. Hopefully, great news for the Valley viewers, but they can get that situation rectified sometime soon because everybody wants to see the Pacers, baby. Dustin, you're the big Pacers fan. No jersey on today, though. But did you get to watch the game last night, Dustin?
I did not. I had stories to write last night, so I've got to go back and through my Valley Sports app and go back and rewatch the game from last night. But I know that
Good
the big
man.
story. I know what the storylines. A couple of them. One was Domantas Sabonis with another double-double. Obviously, it's preseason, so you don't take too much away. But then again, the play from Chris Duarte, and I don't care. Excuse me, I don't care who you are and when it is. Anytime you see a rookie play as well as he did last night, I think that's a positive sign heading into the regular season.
Now, there's no question about that. You know, it was an interesting night because Memphis. Ironically, they play 6 preseason games, which is the most that any team is playing. The Pacers are playing just 4. So Memphis last night opted to rest virtually all of their frontline players. Jaren Jackson didn't play, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, a number of their starters. The Pacers had a number of guys out. Malcolm Brogdon had tweaked his shoulder. Justin Holiday had sprained an ankle. I think if it was a regular season game, those guys would have played. Karis LeVert didn't play, TJ Warren. So he had a lot of frontline players on both teams that were sitting out. But these games are still very important, especially for the Pacers, because you have a new coaching staff, you're trying new things, and especially when you look at the 2 rookies. And they are playing very well right now. Duarte's in the starting lineup. He had 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Isaiah Jackson came off the bench, the rookie out of Kentucky. In 16 minutes, he had 9 points and 4 rebounds. A super athletic player. So that's what these games are about. Yeah, I think it was important for this group to win. Jeremy Lamb played great in the fourth quarter. He had 15 of his 20 points. Remember, 2 years ago, he had an ACL injury. Last year, just didn't play like himself. So games like this are important for a guy like Lamb to gain confidence going into the regular season. So, it was good to get the win. That wasn't the most important thing in the preseason, but it was just seeing guys play and continue to grow.
And we're 3 games into this 4-game preseason so far. Through those 3 games, what do you think is maybe the biggest difference right now, if there is a biggest difference between last year's team and what you've seen? I mean, we're 3 games in, it's the preseason. Maybe you don't see a lot, but is there a biggest difference that stands out to you right now?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I would think the one thing that they want to do, as they did last year, is shoot the 3, but they have not shot the 3 very well at all. They were 0 for their first 13 last night. They were just 5 of 25. I think that will get better. I mean, Jeremy Lamb is a 40% career 3-point shooter. He was 0 for 5 last night. So I do think that will get better. Rick Carlisle will say after watching last night that the defensive intensity wasn't what it needs to be or what it should be when the regular season comes. And I think we all know that last year that was the Achilles heel. They gave up 115 points per game. It was the worst. It was the most points that the Pacers have ever given up in an NBA season. So while they averaged 115 points, they also gave up 115 points. So the defense definitely has to be better. Last night, they struggled in defending the three. Sam Merrill, who played at Utah State, played at Milwaukee last year, he hit 8 threes. And the Pacers gave up a number of corner threes, and that's something that you don't want to do. So there's no question that the defense, all of it is a work in progress, and we'll be able to make a better judgment about this team, easily a month into the year.
Last week, I think it was, we talked about Miles Turner coming out of that at the time. I think it was the first preseason game, saying they didn't come out with enough intensity on the defensive end and they weren't in the right mindset and attitude. I'm just curious, you've been covering this team a long time, doing the play-by-play a long time. How difficult is it for these players when you've played in the regular season, when you've played in the playoffs, you've played in a lot of meaningful games? How difficult can it be to try to go into a preseason game knowing the results don't matter with that same sort of intensity, try to get your mindset before the regular season starts?
Well, I think that's a good point. You're playing these games. The minutes are important. The outcome is and is not important. I mean, I've seen some of the preseason games where teams are just getting blown out. You don't want that to happen. I mean, even though the game doesn't count, you want to put up a reasonable showing as far as the outcome is concerned. But the one thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to put players in positions that they will find themselves in the regular season. And that's why last night, with the game tied at 107 and the Pacers with the basketball in the final 20 seconds, it's something that Rick Carlisle and his staff work on every day. They put a time up on the clock and work on situations, but it's practice. Last night, it was a game, and the Pacers were able to come through, run an isolation play for Jeremy Lamb. He hit the shot to put them ahead, and then the Pacers had to play defense for the final 3 seconds to win the game. Those are things, even though you can create in practice, Justin, again, it's just practice. It's not the game. So I thought last night was very valuable for the Pacers as far as that was concerned.
And, one of the things, too, going back to Rick Carlisle's press conference was, working a way to, or finding a way to play Sabonis and Miles Turner at the same time, but also having some sort of staggered, sort of lineup at times to try to throw defenses and other teams off. What do you think the approach is going to be using those two guys? I think it's more important on the defensive end. I think both those guys can produce offensively. I think they've shown that. My questions come on the defensive end. I think Miles Turner's a little bit more versatile, and Sabonis is more of a guy who can protect the basket. I mean, Miles protects the basket pretty well, but Sabonis is a little bit more one-dimensional on that side. How do you think Rick Carlisle is going to use those two guys throughout the course of this season?
That's definitely the dilemma on the defensive end. You hit it, because Miles' strength is protecting the rim. He led the NBA in block shots last year at 3.5. And he is versatile enough that he can get out on the perimeter and defend. But Domas's weakness, even though he can protect the rim, he's not as strong as Miles. So I think what you will see is the way they stagger him, especially early. I think those two start together, play 5, 6, 7 minutes. One of the bigs comes out, and then that big comes back in to start the second quarter. So I think that you'll see them play together, maybe 15 to 18 minutes per game, and they'll be staggered at other points. And then I think as the game plays out, it will depend how Rick Carlisle wants to go. He has a number of different options: Isaiah Jackson, O'Shea Brissett, from a big standpoint. And then you have to factor in foul trouble and, unfortunately, injuries. We know that Miles Turner last year missed the final 16 games. Domantas Sabonis missed 10 games during the year. So you're probably going to have, knock on wood, 10 to 15 games where you may only have one of them. So I think it will all work out in the end. I think from an offensive end, we're seeing Miles Turner put the ball on the floor and drive to the basket. His first 2 baskets last night were drives. That also opens up his ability to shoot the three, and also just gives this team some versatility offensively that they may not have had the last couple of years.
And you talked about, you suspect that you may not get, or you probably aren't going to get Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis healthy together for the entire season. I mean, that's just the course of an NBA season. There are bumps and bruises along the way. But how important then is that to have drafted a guy like Isaiah Jackson, who I know he may not be, he's still to me a pretty raw talent right now. But again, I think back to how raw Lance Stevenson was. And when he got his opportunities to kind of develop, he really flourished in that type of role. So do you see that same sort of potential for him? I know they're playing different positions, but when I see him on the floor, I see that same sort of athleticism, that guy that, maybe midway through the season, he can start to make a significant impact.
Yeah, I think, he sort of pushed Goga Bitadze deeper onto the bench just because of his athleticism, right, his ability to play both the 4 and the 5. He was a guy, Dustin, that I think, back when he was drafted during the summer, even though he was drafted at 22 in the first round, you looked at him and said, well, he'll probably spend a significant amount of time in the G League with the Fort Wayne Mad Ants to start the year. I don't think that's the case at all. I think he will be with the Pacers from day one. I think he will be a part of the rotation from day one. Now, how many minutes does that mean? I think it could fluctuate and vary on a game-to-game basis. But he's a guy right now I think you can trust. And one of the reasons is just because of his superior athleticism. And in a league that is very athletic, and a Pacers team that has not been as athletic as many of the other teams in the league, he's the type of guy that you want on the floor. There was a play last night where Brad Wanamaker, who the Pacers signed, a veteran point guard, was running down the floor. He had Jackson ahead of him. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. They lobbed it up to the basket, and Jackson pounded it down. The Pacers have had nobody that can do that, in the recent past. Right. So it's something that I think is an added element for Rick Carlisle that I think he will not hesitate to use. And I think they want to see these two rookies grow and play. Yeah. They are two of the future players of this franchise. So I think you will see a lot of Duarte and Jackson early in the year.
And one more question.
Chris, one more. Oh, Dustin, go ahead. Finish it out for us.
I was just going to say, I have one more question for you before we let you go. From a professional standpoint, from your job standpoint, I know that you're not going to be on the road, at least to start the season. But you got 2 road games to start the season for the Indiana Pacers. But you've been able to around the team. You've been to preseason games. You've been at practices. How beneficial is that, knowing you've got to go 2 road games and having that past experience? How beneficial for that is you? How beneficial for you is that heading into this season, knowing you're still going to be doing some of those games from Bankers Life Fieldhouse or from Gainbridge Fieldhouse? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, I said I was 100% last night in Gainbridge Fieldhouse and Valley Sports, Indiana. So I felt pretty good about that. No, it's huge, Dustin. Last night at halftime, we're back courtside. We're right next to the Pacers bench. So I hadn't been that close to calling Pacers game since at Gainbridge Fieldhouse since February of 2020. So that is a year and a half. Yeah. Domantas Sabonis comes out at halftime and has a big smile on his face, and he says, "Hey, CD, it's great to see you." Because if you think about it, I went a year and a half where I didn't really see these guys. Yeah. I mean, I saw them from afar. So even though we are not traveling to road games to start the year, you're right. I've been at virtually every practice. I've been around the players. I've been around the coaches. I was down on the floor last night. So we're getting back to, a real sense of reality as far as the broadcast is concerned. And the way we have it set up in the studio, we probably have as good a studio setup as anybody in the NBA. So that really helps us. And I would think it will be reevaluated as most teams are doing. I think it's about half are traveling and half are not. I would think that, by January, by 2022, that we would probably be back on the road for those road games. But to your point, just being back at practice, being back in the Ascension St. Vincent Center on a daily basis, I'll be down there again today. It just makes all the difference in the world.
Well, Chris, we appreciate your time this morning, especially having to have you on quite a bit earlier than normal, but we're looking forward to having you next week. By the time next week, the Pacers will have already got the NBA season underway.
That's right. Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris. We'll see you next week. Jim will be back with us here in a little bit. We also got Matt Taylor coming up, obviously. Dustin Schutte here with us as well this morning. Keep listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio here, sponsored by Southern Stone Restaurant. We'll be back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration or
Sweet. You don't have to do this entire next segment, Dustin, with the Colts if you don't want to. I've got I can get a couple questions in about the game they lost, and
please do, because I have not been able to watch hardly any NFL football.
And I actually haven't even confirmed with Matt Taylor this morning. Usually I do, but since things are weird, didn't cross my mind. So it's not the worst thing in the world. If he doesn't show up, we can obviously talk other things. And actually, one thing we can do as after we talk some NFL stuff with him, if he does show up, is some Indiana stuff, because he's given his thoughts on Indiana stuff before. So, and he's a fan, I believe. So that works out. Excuse me. Do you hear some fuzziness, or is that just me?
Fuzziness? I don't hear any fuzziness.
Okay. Yeah, I only hear it when there's dead silence.
Dead silence.
Oh, man. Got about a minute and a half. If he's not here when we start, we'll just go into regular Indiana. Oh, here we go. Oh, here's Jim. Hey,
yeah,
Jim.
don't worry. If you want to be funny, you can put up a ambulance sign or an ambulance picture.
So you gonna come in for this segment?
Yeah, I could this way.
Okay, that's
Man.
fine.
Oh God! Somebody just shoot me.
We got this. If you need a break.
Oh, I know you guys kill it. I feel bad.
Yeah, no need to.
No need. No, we got this. We're seasoned vets.
I know that. God. When you coming up to Bloomington, Dustin?
No idea.
Man, keep asking that.
Hey, if you do end up dropping out again, Jim, do make sure you're, if you can, at least back for Kyle Neddenriep, because that segment will be bad.
I already said no. That's
yeah.
I wish we were still playing music, because I have his lead in his walk up music. I know what it would be for this segment.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Here we go. We're coming back.
This segment is brought to you by Sam's Family of Restaurants. Fresh, local, family. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition with us. John, the producer. Looking forward to talking to Matt Taylor from the Colts. Brought to you by the folks at Psalms Restaurants. If you're up and around there, make sure you stop into any of the Psalms locations. Big Lug Cantina. They also have Psalms at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. While we're waiting for Matthew, man, I guess I should say it before he gets on. I could not believe they lost that game, man. First of all, the fact that I tuned in late, like the second half, and they were up. I forget what it was when I first. It was not 25-9, but it was less than that to 9. An odd score, by the way.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, man, they've kept the man in check. They've kept Lamar Jackson in check somehow. And then all of a sudden, he becomes Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Michael Vick combined. I've mentioned this a couple times this week. It's because it's an amazing stat. I forget exactly. I think he threw for 443, something like that. But it was the percentage. His completion percentage was the highest of any quarterback in NFL history to throw for 400 yards.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson was 37 for 43, 442 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Okay, 37 for 43.
That's insane.
That's 6 freaking misses out of 43 throws, man.
Especially for a quarterback that has been.
What is the percentage?
I'm gonna have to get out the calculator here.
John, did you not have it?
It's 80.
I don't have the actual percentage, but I have it as 37 for 43.
It's 86%.
Okay, first of all, this is an NFL game. If you're throwing 12, 13, 14 passes, okay, I can see that. But holy cow. Hey, there's Matt joining us. How you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm good, guys. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. I was just talking about I was tuned into the Colts game a little later than I'd hoped to, but man, when I tuned in, I was like, holy man, they've kept Lamar under wraps like nobody has this season. It was crazy. And then he turned into Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Michael Vick all in one.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he played just a fantastic game, and certainly the best game of his career. And unfortunately, it came against the Colts. But I'm not trying to sell that performance short because I think the Colts had a lot to do with it. To be honest with you, very, very disappointing defensive effort. He played great. Don't get me wrong, but he's a 60% completion percentage quarterback so far this season, and the Colts turned him into an 86% quarterback in one game. And so, some injuries factored into it. Guys are going down. Towards the end of that game, the Colts are playing with, third and fourth string cornerbacks just because of the attrition. The Colts had, players like Bo Pete Keys and Anthony Chesley into the ball game, and those were guys that we saw a lot in August in the preseason, and they were on the practice squad. So it's a very, very disappointing loss. You're up 19 points, 3 minutes to go there in the third quarter. It's something that's, I think, going to be I think emotionally and spiritually hard to come back from. But that's sort of the beauty of the NFL. It's no matter what happens, good or bad, the NFL mandates that you turn your direction very quickly to the next opponent, and that's what the Colts are forced to do. And so now they're 1-4, and the hardest part of their schedule is over. We talked about those 5 games to start the season. We talked about that ad nauseum in the offseason and in training camp. It was the most difficult 5-game stretch to start a season for any team in the last 30 years. And despite that, I don't think anybody internally saw 1-4, but here they are, 1-4. A lot's gone into that. You can unpack it a million different ways, but you are what your record says you are, and the Colts really have their work cut out for them coming up. But the good news is, and if you want to stay optimistic, the AFC South it's not like it's the NFC West. I think it's still obtainable, but you got to start stacking good performances, and I think that's what the Colts did for 2.5 quarters. They played great. It was a chance for them to really make a statement and to prove to the rest of the National League that the Colts are better than their 0-3 start. That didn't happen. But coming up, they play 4 of their next 5 against teams that are under 500, and that coincides with the Titans, who are in first place in the AFC South. They now have their toughest part of their schedule coming up week 6 through 10. So on paper, if you're going to do it, you got to start now. And it sounds cliche, but I think mindset-wise, this game coming up on Sunday against the Texans, it's the Colts Super Bowl. If they got to treat it like it's their Super Bowl, it's a must-win game because going 1-5 and 0-2 in the AFC South, that's mathematically that's pretty hard to overcome.
And Matt,
Yeah,
you bring up
go ahead, Dustin.
You bring up a good point, and something I was going to talk about was, for their next 5 opponents being under 500. So, it's the NFL. It's never technically getting easier, but when you look at who the Colts had to play through those first 5 games, I mean, to me, if you're able to get to 5-5 after this, quote unquote, called a bit of a disastrous start, if you're able to get to 5-5 in heading into those final 7 games of the season, maybe you're able to generate a little momentum and get this franchise, this team, to where it was expected to be challenging for the top of the AFC South.
No, you're exactly right. And so if you look at this schedule, plus, just all the, I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to say turmoil, because turmoil suggests something else, but just all the unsteadiness, I guess, would be the right term to use it, with the injuries and, Carson Wentz having foot surgery, Quentin Nelson having foot surgery, obviously some up and down play on the defensive side of the ball. There's just, like I said last week, it's almost as if the first couple of weeks of the season, in the regular season, unfortunately had to act as training camp 2.0, because the regular training camp just wasn't as fruitful for the Colts as it needed to be, because you just had a lot of guys missing time with injuries. They didn't get time on task together, and therefore didn't build a lot of synergy. And so now you're starting to see what this team can be. I mean, offensively, I don't know what more you want. I mean, you put up 513 points, or I should say yards, on a really, really good defense. Baltimore's, they've got studs on that side of the ball, and the Colts moved it up and down on them. Carson Wentz had the best game of his career, and he's starting to, really kind of find his rhythm in this offense. But unfortunately, I think it took about a month for him to get there because of all the time he missed in August and September. So it sort of is what it is. And, one of the things that they have to figure out going forward, if they want to take advantage of that schedule that you're talking about, Dustin, they've got to figure out red zone. If you wanted to look at some of the just common denominators through 5 games on, okay, what's working, what's not, one of the biggest things that they have to figure out is scoring touchdowns when they get inside the 20-yard line. It goes without saying, but in the NFL, man, if you can score and you can hold your opponent out of the end zone, that's really what it boils down to. It's all situational football in this league. It's third down, and it's red zone offense, and it's red zone defense. And right now, on offense, the Colts are 7 for 19 scoring touchdowns inside the 20-yard line this season. That's last. That's 32nd. You can't get any worse than that. And last week, they were 1 for 4. And anytime you lose a 19-point lead, everything's going to be looked at and scrutinized. And, the offense was great, but they could have been even better, and they could have helped the defense out, with some of the second half letdowns that occurred. And, they had a kicking situation. So, the Colts in that game, they went on 3 9-play drives of at least 9 plays, 3 of them. And they got no points on those drives. And 2 of those red zone appearances, they got no points at all. Not just touchdowns, but just no points at all. So that's really what it boils down to. Like if you want to look at just, big picture, broad stroking, what's going on in 5 weeks, it's red zone offense, red zone defense, and just not able to prevent the big plays on the defensive side of the ball.
I was thinking that there's a lot of parallels between Indiana University and the Colts at the start of the season in different ways, but both the start of the season, you talked about the Colts gauntlet. Indiana, the same thing. This week they play their 4th team in 6 weeks that is ranked in the top 10. I mean, that is nuts, first and foremost. But they could have their offense, their defense was their best friend to start off. The offense, not so much. It looks like the Colts' offense was looking good here of late, and Carson Wentz was actually looking good. And I'm just thinking, how good could they have been, or much better could they have been if they'd have had a longer start with him, if he'd have been in the fold a little longer, the injuries and all of that stuff played into this 0-3 start. And man, but they seem so close to not being that team, if you know what I mean. And last week was one of those examples. They were just, it's like it's right there, but just it slips away, and man, and it's harder to take. And like you mentioned, how hard that game is, that loss to come back from, because man, not only is it a win, an important win, and a win that would put you at 2-3 versus 1-4, which is gigantic, but it's a win against a hell of a good team, against a Lamar Jackson and those guys. And that would have been a solid win and probably would have propelled them forward. But hopefully they can get it pulled together on the defensive side. The offense is coming together, it looks like. The offensive line, I didn't get to watch all of the game, Matt. Are they healthy there?
They are getting closer. I mean, obviously right now they're down 2 starters. I mean, Braden Smith continues to deal with a strained foot. And if he misses this game on Sunday, it'll be his 5th straight game missed. He's at right tackle, and then their all-pro left guard, Quentin Nelson, is dealing with a myriad of things. He went on IR with an ankle a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to miss at least this game on Sunday and then be eligible to come back and play next week at the earliest, but we'll have to wait and see on that. So, yeah, that's been a problem too. Plus, Eric Fisher, their starting left tackle, he missed the entire offseason rehabbing a torn Achilles that he suffered in the AFC Championship game while playing with the Chiefs. So that's basically what I'm talking about. I mean, it's been stuff like that all season long. It's been a rotating cast of characters. There just hasn't been a lot of continuity. That being said, I'm incredibly impressed with what they have been able to accomplish on offense these last couple of games, and specifically Carson Wentz. I mean, if you're making a list of, the top 10, 12 reasons why the Colts are 1-4, I'm not even sure Carson Wentz makes your list. He's been that good. And, the most, the loss that has the most repercussion is that Tennessee loss, obviously, because it's an AFC South game and, they're your chief rival right now in the division. And unfortunately, that's the game where he played on 2 sprained ankles. So you kind of throw that game out. Outside of that, he's been great. I mean, he's thrown only 1 interception, and even that's got an asterisk on it because it was a shovel pass that was, really kind of just screwed up from the beginning. It was a play that was really disrupted by the Rams. But at any rate, it goes down as a pick. But really, that's it. That's his only blemish. And again, I preface with what I'm about to say with, the last 2 weeks, he is getting healthier in terms of those ankles. I think that for the most part, those ankle injuries are behind him, and he's getting more acclimated inside this offense. So with that being said, I know it's a small sample size, but in weeks 4 and 5 respectively, he is 3rd in the NFL in completion percentage. He is 4th in the NFL in passing yards. He is 3rd in the NFL in yards per attempt, and he's tied for 5th in completions over 25. Okay, so in the last 2 games, he's a top 5 quarterback. And, you have to take advantage of that. And, again, that's where the red zone troubles come in and make it, even more discouraging and frustrating because you're getting top-level play from your quarterback. You just aren't being able to finish. And then, obviously, you had the defensive letdown. So, Carson Wentz talked after the game, you got to build a killer instinct. You got to find ways to finish these football games. And, Bill Parcells always said, you are what your record says you are. And indeed, the Colts are 1-4, and they're much better than a 1-4 football team. We all know that, but, just the record's not showing it, and the performances are not being complete 60-minute games. The Colts have to get back to playing complimentary football. And so, we talk about the schedule coming up and how it's favorable on paper and all this stuff. Like, if I'm a player on the team, you just can't worry about that. I mean, you just can't. Like, all that you can worry about is just doing your job on Sunday.
Well, it's about time to take a break anyway, and it looks like we're going to do that now. Matt Taylor from the Colts joining us. We appreciate him. as he does each Thursday as he's heading out to, I guess he's heading out to practice right now, probably on his way out to the facility. But Matt Taylor, voice of the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, that was such a tough game. We got to take a break, but we'll talk about it, I guess, when we come back. But man, that's just a tough one to lose, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, at one point it was 22-3. You blow a 19-point lead. Obviously, Rodrigo Blankenship was dealing with some hip things, I believe, but he missed.
Yep.
He had missed one field goal coming into that game, missed two in that game, and if you make just one of those, the Colts get out of there. They don't even go to overtime. They get out of there with a win. So a lot of things
blocked, right? Was one of the field goals blocked?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, one of them was blocked, and that's the first time he's ever had a block.
Yeah,
I think of any kind, extra point otherwise, and I think he also missed an extra point, or there was an extra point missed by the Colts. It was in the first half, I believe. So I don't know what happened, but you're right. I think there were two field goals and an extra point that they missed. Although the Ravens. They had missed an extra point, and they tried to get the 2-point conversion once. They didn't get it, then they get it later. But, yeah, if you're not a Colts fan, it was kind of fun to watch Lamar go around. But we got to take a break. We got more coming up. Kyle Neddenriep joins us next. Have mercy, baby. We're back with more. Brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer. If you're down in the Clarksville area, make sure you stop off right off of I-65 on the north side of the Veterans Parkway exit. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant. Whether you're looking for...
Hey, John.
Yes.
I have an idea.
What's your idea?
How do I put like a picture behind me?
Instead of what you're doing right now?
Yes.
I don't know that you can. I've never done that.
Well, people have. I know you can.
Zoom.
It's not something to be trying on the fly, but
why not? Why would I not? What do I not do on the fly?
That's fair. It's a fair point.
Thank you very much.
I like how I'm the only one whose face is showing right now.
Oh, I'll come back.
I bet you do.
I'm probably bringing in more viewers.
But
get out of here.
The funny thing is, I sound 1,000 times better right now. I'm fine. I'm like, hey, I'm fine, except for I'm staring at the ceiling.
Switch your logo, by the way, back to something else.
I don't know how to do it.
Oh, well, I guess you had to drop out to do that.
I'm staring at the ceiling.
I need to tell Kyle. For some reason, him and Matt, and I think it's mainly Matt. I don't think Matt would have joined if I didn't text him. Hopefully Jim comes back, though, because it's going to be a pretty lame segment.
Otherwise, I have no idea. Hey, yeah. What are you looking forward to this weekend?
I mean, yeah, I know about Caden Curry. I can ask about him and all the Indiana commits. But that's probably about all I can contribute. And I know Center Grove is the best team in Indiana, which has Caden Curry on it. Oh, here we go.
He back.
Hey, Kyle. Jim should be rejoining us shortly. He's having some issues, but
okay.
If not, we'll
if not, bear with us, Kyle. I don't live in anymore, so
it's been an interesting week to say the least, but it's fine. We've done a lot of things on the fly. It hasn't been terrible. It's just been an interesting week.
Is it a connection issues?
No, it's a medical issue, I think.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. Jim, we're coming back in 15 seconds.
Perfect timing. And $0 down. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com.
come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington. I wish I could think of the girl singer that sang that song.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Thursday. It's beautiful outside. It is a Chamber of Commerce day. Man, perfect fall weather. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joins us. Dustin Schutte is with us, of course, from Saturday Tradition, as always. He's got his Detroit Tigers hat on that has been put away for probably about a month now. At least, Kyle, we have Rick Bozich is on with us each Wednesday, and he is a big-time, long-time White Sox fan. And I'll be honest with you, I thought this was going to be his year, man. But these playoffs playoffs. I think it is now. It's also a law that anyone who says the word playoffs has to say playoffs. You have to say it just like that. But the White Sox go down. All these big, the big 100-win teams going down. Tampa Bay going down. But that's what's baseball, I guess. But it's funny because it's not like it's a one-day deal. These are 3-game series that they're losing, or 5-game series that they're losing. So it's not like they're losing a 1-game playoff to these teams and falling in. So it's kind of wild to watch those teams that have just dominated during the year and just go down.
Yeah, that's I don't feel bad for the White Sox as a Tigers fan. They're in the same division, so I'm hoping that that's the last time we'll see them in the playoffs for a while anyway. So Tigers their young talent will start taking over for about the next decade, but that's probably not going to happen. But it is interesting, these short best of 5 series. It can be over pretty quickly. No matter how good, it's basically comes down to your pitching, and if you're off that day or, and how bullpens work nowadays. I mean, if you're struggling at all, you're going to get yanked, and, maybe the next guy is not on his game either. So it's very, for the course of a 162 game season, you're going to find the best teams and those teams dominate. But, a 5-game best of 5 is super short, and these 1-game playoffs are obviously even more, it's more random. So, it's interesting. The Dodgers, the Giants thing, both those teams, over 100 wins and, playing for the right to move on. I think that game's tonight, right? So that should be really, really fun. And I can't say I'm a fan of any of the teams that are left other than maybe the Dodgers, Giants. I'll probably root for that team, but it's pretty slim pickings at this point, at least in my baseball fandom.
I hear me too, because I'm a Reds fan. So back in the day, they were in the Western Division for some stupid reason, but that meant against LA and San Francisco. So I'm like, I was used to playing against them. And well, now you got the Atlanta Braves going. I'm like, I'm sick of them because they've been in the playoffs since I was 6 months old, I think. They just don't seem to ever get knocked. It's like you got to hand it to them, by the way. A pro franchise like that in baseball, to have the success rate that they have had, that's crazy. But there's that. And then, but it's fun. We got Kyle Schwarber with the Sox, the Red Sox at least.
That's true. But they're a sickening team. The whole woe is us for so long, and now they just win all the time. That whole the Patriots, Red Sox quadrant up there. I can't. I've been to Fenway, and it's an awesome place, and it's awesome venue. But I can't get behind the Red Sox for what I think all the American League teams I just don't like by natural. And then I was a Cardinals fan. I like the Cardinals in the National League. So, went to some, Braves Cardinals when they were, going at it in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it always bothered me. The Braves wouldn't even sell out their stadium for the playoff games. And that was kind of sad, but I don't know. I seem to find reasons to not like teams.
That's easy to do. Dustin, what was I going to say? But moving on. Oh, I can't think of the girl who sings the song, but if we had walk-up music for you today, it would be "Have Mercy." Oh, what was that song, Mercy, that girl sang? I can't remember who it was, but man, I saw your piece and the issue going on in the IHSA, the mercy rules for sports being introduced for various sports. Already have had some and some, but now moving into ground that it's kind of caught people not by surprise, but it's stirred things up. But a lot of times, anytime you change anything, you're going to have people complain just to complain without even knowing all of the facts. And I think some of that may be the problem here.
Yeah, so I guess I was a little caught off guard by the reaction. I'd actually talked to Paul Neidig this summer, and I had written about the possibility of this happening, and it was kind of buried in not buried, but it was part of another story, and we talked about the soccer going to a mercy rule, and football had obviously done it 2 years ago. So I guess I was a little caught off guard by the reaction when it came out the other day. I think it was Tuesday, and they'd passed they altered it. It was supposed to be 30 points, and then they tabled that proposal in the summer and made it 35 instead. So I kind of thought people knew about it. I'm sure people did, coaches and people involved, administrators knew, but maybe the general public didn't know that was coming. But I think you probably touched on part of what I think there's just any time you change something, you're going to have a reaction to it, I guess. And I understand actually the criticism against it, as far as getting in, and I agree with this part, is being able to get players in who don't normally play in those type of situations, and they'll still be able to play. It just the game will just basically be on fast forward at that point. But you can also do that in if it's a 20-point game in the last few minutes or 25, there's nothing stopping you from doing that either. And I think we probably overestimate, maybe how this is going to affect things. I don't see this as being like, oh man, we're missing out on so much because we're going to have a running clock in the fourth quarter or second half. And I know I don't cover a lot of those games. Obviously you're covering better teams, so I don't see that much, but I know it's out there, and probably more so. This probably takes a little bit of studying, but I would say on the girls' side, it's probably more, more prevalent. I would say, where you have total mismatches in some cases, and you see some of those crazy scores like we see time to time where it's like 70-5 or something. Most of those are girls' games, and in those cases, I think, man, get the game over with and move on if it's that much of a mismatch. But yeah, I see the question there. We need a shot clock, not a mercy rule. That was maybe the number one reaction is, why are we getting a mercy rule? We need a shot clock. I don't think it's either or. I think the shot clock is still coming down the road at some point. This is something, the mercy rule is something I think it's being done for a sportsmanship issue, and kind of taking it out of the hands of coaches to kind of I don't know what the word is, but coaches to kind of manage is probably the word, manage those situations. And I think most coaches do, but maybe there's a case where, some idiot thinks they need to work on their full court press when they're up by 50 points. And that, sort of eliminates maybe some of those type of situations. But I've seen, I've definitely seen some valid criticism of the rule. And, I think maybe it's something, I don't know that was all that necessary, but, I think in football it is, because sometimes that's a safety issue and it's that much of a mismatch. Basketball, I don't know. I think there's ways to maybe manage it without having one. But, when I was in Missouri, they had a similar rule. I think it's 35 in the fourth quarter. And, or it's 30. I think it's 30 actually. And if it goes under 30, then they revert back to the normal clock. And in this case, it'll be 35. And once you reach that point, it's just a running clock. It doesn't matter if you cut it back to 20, even it stays running clock. So that part is interesting, but I don't know. We could see some tweaks in this, I think, in the future, but that's going to be what it is. And I would say probably in a couple of years, we'll just kind of be used to having it, and it's not going to be that big a deal.
I wonder if, and I know that taking out of all coaches' hands is probably the best thing to do. But at the very least, what if the opposing, the losing, or the coach that's on the wrong end, at some point they're given the option, hey, we have reached this point. Do you want to move to a running clock or whatever? And let it be their decision, not the other coach who's leading, and let that coach decide, hey, either, no, we want to keep playing, these guys want to play, or yes, let's do that, please. At least that gives them an option, but it's not one where, like you were talking about, and I know, where you're just pouring it on and it's not fair for an undermanned team or whatever else is going on. I think that the team on the losing end, just give them the option at a certain point.
Yeah, I don't mind that idea either. I think, and that's something I've asked about before. But sometimes there's a pride thing that the opposing, it puts it on the opposing coach or the losing coach, to almost say, I could see where that'd be tough, because you don't want to give up on your kids or give them the, even put the thought in their mind that you're giving up on them. So it kind of at least eliminates that fact, and I can understand that.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, but I wonder too. Somebody brought this up. Maybe just eliminating a full court press after it's a 25-point lead, or whatever the point number is. That's something you see at the lower levels of basketball. Some of the non-school basketball, you see that. I think that's a good way. It's sort of, there's that those people who say, like, well, just get better. It's not our problem.
Yeah.
If we're up by 50, we should be able to do
That's
whatever.
what Dustin always says.
Yeah. And you do have to get better, but I mean, if you're up by 50, what does it matter if you win by 60?
You're gaining nothing.
No, it's that's just stupidity by coaches who, in my opinion, I mean, you prove that you're better than them. Why do you have to rub their face in it? But so yeah, there's that problem too, and I completely disagree with that line of thinking.
Where is this most prevalent? I know women's basketball, we, like you said, we see that, but and I know it happens everywhere at some point, but not really. I mean, you're not going to see that a lot of times in football, because they've eliminated that mostly with the class system, and that's what that's for. And on the basketball side, kind of the same thing, although that's probably the basketball, unless a baseball game just gets out of hand or something crazy, a basketball game is probably the only other place you're really going to see it, I guess, really.
Yeah, I mean, a high school sport. I mean, probably smaller schools. Sometimes you're going to see. I covered a team one time. I did a story a few years ago on a team that only had 13 players left, a football team, and they were losing, every game by, this was before the mercy rule, and they were losing every game by, 45, 50 points. But the whole point of that story was, they wanted to finish the season, and make it through the season. By playing every game. And that was kind of their, they didn't want to have to forfeit, even though they were down to 13 players. So, there are situations like that where you almost know going into the game, we have no chance of winning, but we're still going to go out there and at least compete to our highest capability. So I think the smaller schools is where you see it. You do see, I mean, Center Grove had 4 weeks in a row of running clock against MIC opponents, so you do see it at the higher levels too. Maybe just not quite as much, but yeah, I would say, and I'd have to, this is kind of anecdotally, I don't know this for sure, but I would say girls basketball is probably where you probably would see it more often, just because, the sometimes the gap in talent is so wide, but you do see it in boys, you do see it in football, obviously, where the bigger, stronger team, especially on the lines, you're going to be able to dictate the game, up front, and that leads to some mismatches at times. But yeah, I think we'll, I don't mind the rule. I understand the people who are against it. I don't know that it was necessarily necessary either, but I think it'll just kind of become part of the deal. And I don't know if there's a whole big percentage of people clamoring for gosh, if you're down by 40, that we need to not have a running clock. I don't think it'll be that big a deal.
The interesting thing to me, Kyle, about it is that it's interesting on the basketball side from my standpoint, because the games tend to move pretty quickly, whether or not, regardless of what the score is. when I was in school, and I grew up and went to one of those smaller schools up there, Lewis Cass in the Cass County area. And I remember Pioneer beating teams, every week, 60-0 on the football field. And at some point, a lot of those schools, like you said, they might have 24, 25 guys. So then it becomes, almost like a health and safety type thing on the football end. I remember baseball games where some of our players had to bat left-handed because they were up 28-3, and there's no way they're going to get out. So it's just interesting to me for this to happen on the basketball floor, because when you look at the time and there usually isn't a huge safety issue with basketball. Usually the games move pretty quickly, but I also understand that you don't, what's the difference between winning between 40 points and 60 points? You pretty much prove your point.
Yeah, I think I actually like Jim's idea of leaving it up to the coaches. And that has happened, in the past where, it's a discussion between the coaches, like, all right, yeah, let's just run the clock, and let's get it over. And it makes it's a common sense thing, I think, at some point, just to do it that way. If there's just if you're not getting anything out of it, then what's the point?
Right.
Kind of move on to the next week. But I think the IHSAA and the executive board thought, well, this at least, there's a rule in place. And I agree with you, Dustin. I don't know that basketball, this was necessarily like a hot button thing. I mean, 95% of the reaction I got was like, why are we doing this and not a shot clock? Or why are we doing this and not seeding the sectional? And you're from up there. The story I did was on Caston football a few years ago. And that was the team that was getting crushed every week. And I was like, yeah, maybe there's a good story to do here. And it turned out there was. It got a lot of reaction at that time, but there's some honor in kind of fighting through those losses too. And that's something I think that we only look at the winners and losers but you got to, I think, going through something like that and fighting through something shows what you're all about as an athlete as well. It's not just always about that. But I don't know, the mercy rule is kind of something I thought was probably coming based on talking to the IHSA about it. And, I would say, like I said, I think it'll just kind of become part of the deal and we won't think too much about it after a while. But I think people are kind of a little bit surprised by that it came out now, and they feel like there's more hot button issues that need to be dealt with. And I don't think it's an either or thing. I think, we will see a shot clock at some point, like I've said before, but just not quite yet.
Well, we didn't get to talk a lot of football this week, but that's okay. We'll have to catch up with that when we come back this week. But I know of week 7 for high school football?
Week 9, this is it.
What?
This is the last game of the regular season tomorrow night.
Get out of here, man. Well, I'm looking forward to that. I know there'll be a lot of great games. Where are you going to be?
Center Grove Cathedral should be an awesome game.
Wow, there you go. There's the big time. And wish I could get out and see that. Kyle Denripp from the Indy Star. Make sure you give him a follow. Kyle, thank you so much, man.
All right, see you, Jim, Dustin. Thanks.
Kyle Denripp from Indy Star. Give him a follow there on Twitter at Kyle Denripp, or be a subscriber like I am. Hey, we got more coming up. Talk some basketball, football, and yet I'm taking on Michigan State this week. Back with that right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
If you're in the market for a new
All right. Gotta get my laptop.
Someone was requesting that Biscuit make an appearance, Dustin.
Well, that will be that.
What is that?
He's probably taking a nap.
You know what we should have done this year, and maybe we can do it next time, is since you do Biscuit, we should do Biscuit versus Lily Pick'ems. They compete against each other.
That damn dog that Alyssa Lang has, my God.
Oh, that's who does it for the SEC that you were posting last night?
Yeah, she her dog's name is Marvel. I assume she's a comic book fan, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, her dog is like what 18-6 she posted in SEC games.
Yeah. Now, one thing, part of me was like, you could easily rig that if you know your dog is going to go a certain way and put the team you favor in a, that's one way I feel like you could rig that. I don't know.
Well, you could.
I'm just saying it's pretty accurate record.
Are you saying we need a dog?
There you go, Indiana Sports Beat dog.
What would the name of the Indiana Sports Beat dog be?
Right now?
Yes.
Neck brace. Neck brace.
Brace.
Which is what I wish I had.
Well, we can get you a cone. I've got a cone if you want a cone.
You see, even Jennifer picks up on this.
Yeah, she does. But see, I do it. But I try to do it away
like the home
and
team on one side. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't rig it. I try to.
I kind of figured you did that. I didn't really.
Although last week he went to his right 4 times out of 5. Yeah, 5 games he went there on the right 4 times.
Yep.
He picks a side each week. You have to put, in order to get him to do make it fair, I have to put the treats and the bowls at the same time.
Okay, here we go.
At Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Well, it looks like we lost Jim for a second there. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Dustin Schutte joining us this morning. We've already chatted with Kyle Neddenriep, Matt Taylor, and as well as who else we have? Chris Denari. We've already gone through our full lineup for the day. Now it's just us the rest of the day, and now it looks like Jim is back with us. So I will hand things back over to him.
I touch a certain thing on this, and it kills it right now. Sorry about that. You got to be Michael Niehaus. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, name the dog Archie. He's saying right there.
Talk about it. We need to get a dog to make picks. Why on God's green earth would you get that? He must take a crap on everything. He must take a crap on everything that you like, Michael. Is that your dog? Do you have a dog named Archie? Man,
we'll find out.
Yeah,
he's going to respond. We're going to find out if he's got a dog named Archie.
Yeah, we have to get a dog to do some picks or whatever they do. But yeah, no, I don't think so. Let's see. Basketball wise, Noah Clowney moved up his decision date, October 31st. Is it going to be a happy Halloween?
I feel like you'll see a lot of Indiana fans, if Noah Clowney does pick up Indiana, taking the Halloween theme very seriously and dressing up as a clown in honor of him if he, goes with the Hoosiers.
I didn't even think of that. I like that though.
I saw someone else make a post similar to that, so I thought I would steal that.
I'm gonna take it one spot further. I would be a clown email. Clown email. Get it?
Oh yeah, puns. I don't know if that's a pun, but
we could send you one of those clown afro things and then an Indiana jersey. So there you go. Although maybe that sends the wrong message. I don't know.
Forrest likes to make sure we know he's not a sports fan. We know, brother. We appreciate you anyway. Everybody's got it. Everybody's got their stuff, brother. But yeah, we've got to get to that. But that is a big decision looming for the Hoosiers on the 31st. I mean, I think they're in a good position, but that's just a guess. I'm not in his camp. And unless you're in his camp, you don't know. He did reschedule his visit to Alabama for the 23rd. I believe it's the 23rd is when that's going to happen. So that's still another 9 days away. So a little over a week. So I assume that's next weekend. So he'll be going that, and that would be his final visit to all 4 of the finalist schools. That would certainly top off Mike Woodson's first recruiting class. I mean, it would give him, I think it was Rick Bozich who said that, it would give him someone in virtually every position, which is probably how he would like it every year, to have someone in each position, a big guy, a point guard, a wing, a 2-3 or 3-4 combo. But because you can do a lot with that. Those guys, I hate to use the term positionless basketball, but that's the term you use now. And these bigs, they're loving that, man. You got guys like Xavier Booker at Cathedral, who he wants to get out and go, and he wants to be able to shoot from the perimeter, because eventually, if his dream is to play in the NBA, which it is for all those kids, then you have to be able to do that now. That's where the game has gone to. You have to be able to do almost everything but be a point guard. And sometimes you have to be able to bring the ball up. You have to be able to handle the ball. So it has changed. Can you imagine Shaquille O'Neal bringing the ball up the floor?
No, God. No.
I mean, there's my perfect example, and it came to me just like that without even thinking. Can you imagine Shaquille O'Neal shooting from the perimeter? Hell, he couldn't shoot from the free throw line.
Yep.
But he didn't have to. He would just knock you into next week.
Yeah, he'd get you in foul trouble. I mean, the thing I think that's interesting about the recruiting aspect of this is you almost have to, and this doesn't just apply to Mike Woodson, this applies to every coach just about in every sport now, with the transfer portal and guys leaving. We've seen it in football, guys leaving midway through the season. You have to almost over-recruit, because you don't know who's going to leave, who's not going to like what they're seeing, who's not going to get enough playing time, who maybe made the wrong decision, all this other stuff. So it's interesting to me. Plus, we always talk about, there's always this period of time where coaches have to get their guys, quote unquote, into the system. So I think what you're seeing is, if you're able to get some of these recruits at each position, even though maybe you're looking at a somewhat positionless basketball scheme, or whatever the plan is moving forward, we'll find out. You want to be able to get as many of your guys that are going to fit your system, and high-level guys that you can send on to the next level as early as possible, so you can try to make that impact. Because God knows Indiana fans waited for a long time under Tom Crean. He eventually got it to some place where it was relevant again, and then it dropped off. Archie Miller, they never were able to get to relevance. So even though this isn't going to be an instant fix, I don't think this Indiana team is going to be a lot better than they have been, and should challenge for a spot in the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Probably top 4 or 5 team in the Big Ten, but we'll see. But I mean, you're going to see this team, the quicker he can get his guys in there, the quicker he can get players in that want to run his system and understand what he's trying to do, I think the better off Indiana's going to be.
Speaking of the transfer portal, we mentioned the other day about, and you mentioned people leaving in the middle of the season, whether it's football or basketball.
Drives me
insane. We thought that there was a deadline during the summer that would keep players from entering the transfer portal after that time period. Does that open back up? Is that why you're seeing people leave in the middle of the season? Why isn't that one final in to being able to leave for that one-time transfer rule? Or do you think that will be something that is implemented in the future?
There is a deadline for the transfer portal, but that's to play this season. That's why Samson James's waiver got denied. So players can enter the transfer portal anytime they want. They just can't go to another team and start playing for another team. And I don't know if they're able to commit and get on campus with another team right away or not. I don't know the rules. I haven't read the rule book. But what they're trying to prevent basically is a guy like and I'm just going to use him as an example because I don't have anybody else off the top of my head, but they don't want a guy like Samson James leaving Indiana, him going to Purdue, and him knowing Indiana's entire playbook, so he's going to be on the team that season. I mean, it's going to happen. He's going to know the playbook anyway. Whether it's not going to change that much. I mean, God, we've figured out Indiana's offensive playbook anyway, so it doesn't. I mean, I don't think that matters. But that's the point they're trying to do. There's no limit on when a player can enter the transfer portal. You just have to enter it by a certain date if you want to play for the upcoming season and get that immediate waiver, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be that way. Otherwise, like you said, you're taking privileged information. You're putting teams at hardship, especially when you can go anywhere now, especially within the conference.
Yeah.
That would make it just crazy.
Well, and imagine, I don't even know if I can think of a good example, but let's say, let's say David Bell. This is the best option I have. Let's say David Bell, Purdue's best wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten. He's obviously on the team that's 3-2, probably not going to win the West. He wants to go over to Iowa. They need some help with the wide receiver position. He can plug and play, and that's basically then you're looking at NFL free agency, trades, that sort of stuff, where you leave one current team and you're able to go over and play for another team. So it's really good that the NCAA put that in place, put that kind of benchmark and that barrier in place so players can't leave and join another team immediately into the season.
Exactly, and as it should be. Indiana's running backs room has been decimated. That's going to play a critical role in the rest of the season for them, no doubt. We've talked about them trying to rely on their running game all season to help get the offense moving. You lose your quarterback again. The offensive line has just not been doing the job needed all season. You got to find something positive out of that. I think Jack Tuttle may be the positive, hopefully. It's a fresh opportunity for him. The questions remain on Nick Sheridan from an outside standpoint. From you cover all these Big Ten teams. It looks to me that Indiana's offense has just looked stagnant. It doesn't have a quick punch. It doesn't have. It's just too slow. Everything is too slow developing. Everything is just too slow. They don't do enough to keep defenses on their heels. I don't even want to use the word predictable. That's ridiculous to use. If you're doing your job, it doesn't matter if you're predictable or not. But it comes to a time where you have to make adjustments and do things differently when the things you're doing aren't working. And I haven't seen that happen yet.
Well, and I think I posed this question on the podcast or a radio show. I don't know where, but the point is if I ask you what's Indiana's offensive identity, what's your answer?
Right
exactly.
now?
Exactly. Your silence spoke. The silence was deafening, right? Because there is no identity with this offense. I can't tell you what they're trying to do.
Offense, no. With the offense, absolutely not. They're not a running team. They're not a passing team. They're not a run and shoot team. They're not a fast action team. They're not. It's not a West Coast offense. It's not gunslinger. There's not a term I can think of that puts into other than just a regular old fashioned back when I was in junior high school.
They might be more.
Well, I mean, from a speed perspective, they're not trying to get an advantage on the defense by keeping you on the field and moving plays quickly, which is when you don't have the talent, when your offensive line is not working as well, probably something you might want to consider to give your quarterback a little more opportunity. Roll them out, do some things differently. You couldn't roll Michael Penix out because he can't run. Well, if that's the case, then you've already diminished your offense. If you're telling me you're not calling rollout plays simply because that's a concern, well, then you've already diminished your offense. There's no way that you're, and Michael Penix is a great kid, great quarterback, but if that was the situation, I'm saying if that was the situation, then you've got a diminished offense from the beginning. And as the offensive coordinator, that's your job to make that decision and say, Coach, I know, but our best chance is with here. I don't know that that's going on.
Right. Well, I think back to, I think it was a few years ago when Peyton Ramsey came in for Richard Lego, and the offense just looked better. I mean, I don't think Richard Lego was a terrible quarterback by any stretch, but the offense just looked better. So that's what I'm interested to see. I'm assuming Jack Tettle's going to be the starter this week. And so if that's the case, what happens if the offense does just look better? What if Nick Sheridan open? And I've said this multiple times, like what this week against Michigan State, you've got nothing, in my opinion, you've got nothing to lose. I mean, at this point, you're 2-3. You're not going to win the Big Ten. The ideas of getting back to Indianapolis are pretty much dashed. So why not have some fun? You need to open up the playbook, go and dig into your bag of tricks, try to find something that's going to work. I don't care who the quarterback is. You've got to try to mix it up this in these next few games, because what you're doing, it's not good enough to beat anybody on the schedule. So you have to be more creative. And maybe with the week off, maybe that's what Indiana is going to be doing. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of offensive creativity from this team heading into this weekend.
Let's take a quick break. We're talking Indiana football right now. We got basketball to talk and all that. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Traditions with us. Back with more right after this. Brought to you by the fine folks at Andy Moore Honda. If you're looking for a great deal, Andy Moore Honda's got it in Bloomington. We've got brand new 2021 pilots and passports. $0 down, 0% APR financing. Great deals. Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Back with more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration or
Man, I was trying to change my avatar. I had it figured out a minute ago, but I don't know how to get back over there.
If I could do it for you, I would, but it won't let me. Excuse me.
I was there.
Well, we lost him again.
In and out, in and out. There. Oh, never mind.
While he's missing, I want to show you a comment. This is from earlier.
I can't. That was.
What?
It just made me laugh even more because I know exactly what he was talking about.
Oh, man.
What? Who's talking about?
Someone in the comments earlier.
Did I miss something?
It was Pete, I think.
What did he say?
Telling Dustin to keep it together earlier whenever you were transitioning in and out.
Oh, man.
If you need to be done, you don't have to. I know this is your show. I don't want to tell you not to do your own show, but don't feel like you have to do this.
I'm just trying to change the avatar, man.
Oh, okay. I thought you were still hurting.
Well, of course I'm hurting, but I'm laying
Well,
down.
yeah,
So it's
obviously you're still hurting. I didn't mean it to sound like you're not
If I'm
in
lying
pain.
down flat, if I'm lying flat, I'm fine.
Let's bring him back in.
Rims for 0% APR financing over 48 months and $0 down. Or how about a brand new 2021 Honda Passport? Also 0% APR financing over 48 months and $0 down. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by AAA Insurance. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. Dustin Schutte with me, as always. John, the producer. Jim Coyle here. Homecoming weekend at Indiana, taking on Michigan State. We were fortunate to have Derek Jackson on with us yesterday, Van Waiters. Dustin Van Waiters, linebacker for IU back in the Mallory days, and that great run that they had. Now coaching football down in Florida, high school football down in Florida. We've had him on. We had him on before. Who was it that they were recruiting somebody, John, weren't they, from his school?
Who, Indiana?
Yeah. Or were we
they
just
were, so what I remember,
playoffs?
they were talking about his struggles, like Van Waiters' team struggles right now, and how they're trying to get into the playoffs, and he was talking about
No, I'm
his
talking about
going
when
to
we
see.
had him on before.
Oh, I wasn't here. I wasn't a part of your show when you had him on before.
Really? It's been that long
Yeah.
ago. I didn't realize it was that long ago. Wow. Holy cow. But, yeah, it was great. But getting those guys on. But some guys coming up for homecoming. But this Michigan State game is not the game that I thought it was going to be way before the season. Of course, none of these games are. They've all changed for the reasons that we've talked about.
I was going to say it's almost. I was going to say it's almost the opposite, right? You would have expected
it is exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. You are right.
If I told you that heading into this game, one team was 6-0 and the other was 2-3, you probably would have suspected that Indiana was going to be the undefeated team. Even though I didn't think that they would be undefeated heading into this game. I knew that Penn State was going to win. I knew that they were the more talented team, so I expected them to have at least one loss. But the point being is Michigan State's playing at a completely different level. Their offense, I've used this term over and over again, and I sound like a broken record, but their offense is explosive. They've got a Heisman candidate. I truly believe that. And Kenneth Walker, he's nearly impossible to stop. Nebraska did the best job of anybody this season kind of containing him. Jalen Naylor just had 3 receptions of 60 yards or more on 3 touchdowns. I mean, he had 5 catches and 3 touchdowns in that game against Rutgers. Peyton Thorne, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's hovering around, I think, a 65% completion rate. Like, this Michigan State offense has weapons all over the field. And I think that the one advantageous aspect for Indiana, when you look at how poorly their offense is played, is that Michigan State can be beaten by their secondary can get beaten. So that's an optimistic sign for Indiana. But when you look at this on paper, the way Michigan State can score, the way they can punch, hit those big plays, I don't know how Indiana's offense is going to be able to keep up with them. Like, I could see this game getting into somewhat of a shootout, maybe like that Western Kentucky game. But I just don't think that Indiana has the firepower to score as much as Michigan State does.
I don't know that Indiana has the firepower to score as much as anybody they play, to be honest with you. And we won't know that until we see what Jack Tuttle can do. Mm-hmm. And I'm not laying this all on Jack Tuttle, because you have to have an offensive line, you have to have a running game, and you have to have a good game plan. So the quarterback is a major part, yes, but he's a major part, not the only major part. You can throw all the passes you want, like Michael Penix did, and I forget what game it was, maybe the Iowa game. How many drops were there in the Iowa game? I mean, guys dropped, or maybe it wasn't the Iowa game, but there were so many drops. You can't have your number one guys dropping balls all the time.
Well, one thing that I bring up on the podcast with Dustin all the time is, and this doesn't necessarily reflect Jack Tuttle's passing ability, but more so on Michael Penix, I feel like a lot of the dropped balls are because Penix, for some reason, whenever he's throwing those short routes, he throws lasers, and there's absolutely no reason for him to be throwing the ball as hard as he is when the guy you're throwing to is right in front of you. I don't think Jack Tuttle's going to have that issue, and so maybe if he's able to get some of those crossing routes or quick slants, that could help him get some momentum against this Michigan State offense, because Michael Penix isn't able to make those throws. At least right now he hasn't been able to.
I would never agree that a quarterback throws the ball too hard, except for, I think in some instances, Michael Penix throws the ball too hard. And I think that it's in some of these instances. It's just like in golf. Sometimes instead of having the strength, you got to have the touch. Yeah. You can hit a drive 300 yards, but sometimes you need a 26-foot lofted chip that just drops and is placed. And yeah, in the NFL, yeah, they don't even do it in the NFL. I mean, you don't see those guys throwing a laser every time, but those guys are more often to catch the ball. But I think that there might be something to that a little bit, but that is not Indiana's problem, unfortunately. I agree with you is what I'm saying sometimes, which I would not have normally agreed to that statement, but I do. But that hasn't been their problem. It's their game plan has not worked well, and the failure to make adjustments after the half has been non-existent. Game plans going in do not look very good so far. So there's just a lot of things on that side of the ball, and the defense, while they've done a great job because they've been left out to strain so much.
Yep.
Statistically, they're not looking good. They don't look good statistically as a defense. They look great on the eye test. If you watch them play, they're great, but the offense is killing them.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would like to see in this game is, because we've talked about Indiana at points throughout this season, we've talked about Indiana needing to establish the run. That's not going to happen. Like it died when you averaged 3.4 yards per carry against Idaho. Like that hope, you just can't run. You're just going to have to accept that you can't run the ball. But what I want to see is the offense get Stephen Carr, and I know that they're depleted in the backfield, but I want to see them use those guys in a more unique fashion. Get them some of these dump-off passes. Get these guys involved so you have some sort of threat. So maybe you can run the ball on 3rd and 2 and not get stopped short, not get hit in the backfield. So it opens some things up so you can utilize play action to your advantage. They have not been able to do any of those things throughout the course of the season. Like the funny thing was we talked with Mitchell Page, and Jim, you talked with him quite a bit too. Like it's you can't describe what this offense is trying to accomplish, and it's very difficult to watch. I mean, even in the Cincinnati game when they played decent, they had 3 different miscues that would have put the game out of reach in the red zone. So this isn't just like, this is a whole thing. Like they're struggling in the red zone. They're struggling with turnovers. They can't run the football. They can't catch passes. Like everything, the offensive line is not nearly as good as we thought it was going to be. You look at every aspect of this team on the offensive side, and it's bad. Like I cannot point to anything that they are doing well. Like not one thing. And that's a problem.
Absolutely. And they just look pretty vanilla all year. And like I said, you can't just make things be good if they aren't good. But then I think you've got to take some chances and do some things different. And I'm just not seeing a willingness to try to go outside of the box, I guess. I know that no one expected Indiana to need to go outside of the box. They shouldn't have had to, but that's where they are. And they have to do that. And they've got to make changes or their season's going to go into the tank. I mean, instead of looking at a January bowl game, they're now hoping to get bowl eligible. They have to find 4 more wins. 4 wins against this remaining schedule. And I'm not saying that there's not 4 teams on there they can't beat. But I'm not saying that there's 4 teams on there that those same 4 teams can't beat them.
Right.
And whether that's Purdue or Minnesota, Maryland, even Rutgers, because of the offensive lack of production, that scares you. That should scare Indiana fans, because if you're not producing, Rutgers is not Idaho.
No.
They're a Big Ten team. They may not be a great Big Ten team, but let me tell you, they're a Big Ten team. They're coached by a Big Ten coach. They're better than Idaho. So they're better than Western Kentucky. Well, Western's not bad. But it's going to be a challenge. And if you don't have offensive power, that could get ugly. I hope that they can find the 4 wins, sort of like them see that streak going, because that would be damaging to not only to not get a January bowl, but then to just not get a bowl game in the midst of a season where the expectations were as high for Indiana as they have been since 1967, probably.
Right. And to me, I go through this schedule and the remaining schedule, and I know that Michigan State has the 10 in front of it, and Michigan has the 9 in front of it. I still think that the only game that you don't expect Indiana to, the only game I'm not going to give them a shot to win is against Ohio State. There's no way they're going to be able to score enough points to hang in that game. There's no way. So let's take the Ohio State game out of it. I think that you can legitimately say Michigan State's a good football team, but they're not unbeatable. We've seen, they had a tough struggle with Miami. They had a tough struggle with Rutgers for a half. They had a tough struggle with Nebraska. Indiana can win that game. Michigan, same thing. They had to scratch and claw and fight to beat Nebraska on the road. They had some issues with Rutgers earlier this season. And then you look at Rutgers, who's 3-3, Minnesota, who's 3-2, Purdue 3-2, Maryland, who's 4-2. Those teams are all beatable. They're all what I would consider maybe not quite coin flip games, but you can see Indiana winning any of those 6 games left on the schedule. But you're not going to win if you're not able to score points. And so the problem is that you can also some of those coin flip games, you can lose all of them. So there's a very legitimate possibility that if Indiana doesn't figure something out offensively, not only are you going to lose each game, but it's going to continue to wear down your defense because they're on the field so often throughout the course of the season. And you've got to play Michigan State, Ohio State, Maryland, and Michigan through these next 4 games. That defense could be exhausted by the time Rutgers, Minnesota, and Purdue come around, probably your 3 most winnable games on that schedule. So if you don't figure something out offensively, there's a chance that Indiana is 2-10. And then where do you go? Because you're going to start to see recruits decommit.
And that's the scariest thing, because specifically offensively, and I've talked about this kid a lot, Josh Hoover. We pulled his stats up yesterday. Through 6 games, and down there in 6A Texas, Dustin, he's thrown for 1,800 yards.
Wow.
21 touchdowns against 2 interceptions. I don't know what his completion percentage is now. Before the first through 3 games, it was 74%. He just lights it up. He's one of those. He's a great quarterback. I mean, this kid is a quarterback. And he took a chance, in talking to him, Indiana's not a place he ever expected to commit to.
Right.
And so he came here and bought in. Does he stay bought in if Indiana goes 4-6, 4-8 rather, and does it in a bowl game? I mean, they can be spun however they want, but injuries are not. I do not think injuries are costing Indiana's offense. Now, you can say Michael Penix's injury. Well, how much did that play into that? I can't tell you, because how much did it play into him not playing under Kalen DeBoer or a Kalen DeBoer type of offense that is just more frequent hitting. Being coached by that. I mean, I just, you have to acknowledge, not you personally, it has to be acknowledged that guys like that are great coaches. And that's the reason why he's gone and he's at Fresno State and doing what he's having, the success that he's having. Well, he's a good coach and good things happened. And that residue is kind of, after last year's COVID season now, that residue is kind of seems to be gone.
Right. And I wonder, I feel like Michael Penix's status, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know his health. I'm not going to try to gauge where he's at from a physical standpoint or where he was coming into the season. But I think that those first 30 minutes, excuse me, against Iowa, oh, I got a frog in my throat now. There, now I can speak. I think those first 30 minutes against Iowa were way more damaging than for his mental state, because not only him, but Nick Sheridan, like, things went so wrong in that game that I think that it closed down the playbook a little bit. Michael Penix's mental state, like, I can't find my receivers. Ty Freifogel isn't available.
We're not catching the ball.
I've thrown 2 pick sixes. And so I think that it's just kind of spiraled. I think that there was a level, and I don't want to call it cockiness or overconfidence, but I think there was a level of Indiana maybe buying into the hype a little too much. And you want a team to be confident, but you also want them to be hungry. There was a sense to me in that game that when they got smacked in the mouth, they didn't know how to respond. And maybe that goes all around. That's from the top down. So I do think that if you want to look at this glass half full, I think that the positive thing that you can talk to is that, in my opinion, this bye game comes at the right time, because you just got smacked around by Penn State. Penn State played probably a B- game, maybe a C+ game against Indiana, and still won 24-0. So you have to take a long, hard look in the mirror, and I think that they're able to do that with this bye week. They get a nice home game against a good opponent. You get the chance. I don't think they have to win, but I think that they have to be very competitive, move the ball offensively, and that gives them at least some sort of confidence moving forward the rest of the season.
And that's a Penn State team that I'll argue with anybody all day long that is better than Iowa, was better than at Iowa, would have won at Iowa had they not lost Sean Clifford. They would still be undefeated, but at least it gives the West something to crow about, I guess. But I think that everyone knows that game would have been different had Sean Clifford not been lost for Penn State. But that's what happened. Iowa's still undefeated. Penn State's got that loss. The Big Ten East is just a meat grinder. I'm still not sure that if Indiana had looked better on offense at all, they would be considered in with these other Big Ten East teams.
Yeah.
But they just have not looked good in any sense of the imagination. So they're getting none of that, even though they played Penn State close. Penn State was a top 5 team.
Right.
They should have beaten Cincinnati, who the next week goes to Notre Dame and wins and now is a top 3 team. I mean, it's not like Indiana got beat 44-0 by these teams. They should have beat Cincinnati, gave Penn State a game, and really should have given them more, but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we're looking at this thing completely different, maybe not completely different, but at least a little bit different if Indiana beats Cincinnati, because then you say they still have the potential to beat some of these teams and they're 3-2, and what a difference that would make. But because of how they lost that game, and then, a couple weeks later, you go on the road and you get shut out by Penn State. You pair that with the 34-6 loss with Iowa, and you wonder where this team's wins are going to come from. And like I said, I think that 6 of the 7 games on the schedule are still winnable, but they're also very losable.
Michigan State coming up next, of course, this weekend. And I don't have the schedule pulled up. Who's next week?
The almighty Ohio State Buckeyes are next week.
Okay, that's next week. See, the bad thing is even if they were able to pull an upset and get the win this week, it's hard to get a roll going because you got to turn right around and face Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
What's Ohio State currently ranked?
They're also in the top 10. But here's the thing. No matter what, if you get a win against a top 10 undefeated Michigan State team, that is going to give you some momentum going into a game like Ohio State.
Has any team, Dustin, in the history of college football played 5 top 10 teams in, whether it be the first 6 weeks?
I don't.
I know you don't know that off the top of your head, but that just dawned upon me with Ohio State coming up next. I don't see how that's even possible.
Well, the only thing
the SEC teams don't play anybody outside of the SEC unless their name is Troy or Georgia Southern or something like that. So they usually don't play big time games on non-con. So I'm gonna have to look that up. That's going to be an amazing stat. Now, and I know Indiana's going to talk about that. That has nothing to do with their play and nor their record. I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. But I mean, the only other Indiana and Nebraska kind of got the short end of the stick because Nebraska is also playing. They play Michigan State, Michigan, and Ohio State in crossover games. So even though they're in the Big Ten West and they don't have to play this quite the same gauntlet, you compare that with they also had to play Oklahoma in non-conference play, and they're still going to have to play Iowa. I mean, those schedules are very similar. The only difference is that Indiana plays Penn State and Nebraska doesn't.
Say that again.
The only difference is that Indiana plays Penn State and Nebraska doesn't. That's the only difference because Nebraska had to play Oklahoma in non-conference play. They had to play Michigan State, Michigan, and they still have Ohio State on the schedule in crossover games. They'll play Iowa, obviously. So even though Nebraska's in the Big Ten West, the only difference between those two teams, like those Nebraska and Indiana both drew the short end of the stick in terms of scheduling because they got basically the top teams from the opposing division.
Right.
And you can probably make the argument that Minnesota right now, even though they're on their third string running back, Minnesota might be the second best team in the Big Ten West. So Indiana might have drawn the top two teams from the West.
And with a rivalry game on top of that.
Yeah.
Coming from over there. But, I agree. Scott Frost, I guarantee you, he'll agree with you. And speaking of Nebraska, you got to give them credit, man. Their season's going okay. It's not – I'm sure it's not where Nebraska wants to be, but it's certainly better than it was at week 0 losing to Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing what happened in week 0, I thought coming into the season, Illinois was going to be a bowl eligible team. They're bad. That's not going to happen. They can't. The game in Champaign, I mentioned this multiple times. The game in Champaign was the death of the forward pass between Wisconsin and Illinois. I mean, neither team could complete a pass in that game. Illinois is really bad. So when you look at that and you're like, now you watch those two teams play and you're like, how in the hell did Nebraska lose to Illinois? And it's just like Indiana, right? If Indiana beats Cincinnati, we're talking about this thing completely different. If Nebraska beats Illinois, they're sitting 4-3, and their 3 losses are to a top 10 Oklahoma, a top 10 Michigan State, and a top 10 Michigan, all in one possession games. I still think it feels a little bit different for Nebraska because they've been in these games, but at the same time, imagine how the conversation shifts for the Huskers if they win that week 0 game against Illinois.
Let's take a quick break, come back, and talk about the rest of the this weekend's big-time games. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Right after this, brought to you by the great folks at AAA Insurance. If you're in Southwest Indiana or Southern Illinois, down around the Evansville area, reach out to our friends at AAA Insurance. We'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration or
so, about 8 minutes when we come back.
Yeah. Texas A&M beat them. Man, they have Alabama's number, don't they?
Evidently.
They do.
What did Alabama drop to? One spot?
5.
Yeah, they have to make sure they keep them close. They can't let them get too far away.
Yep.
Because what the narrative they're taking is, oh, maybe Texas A&M isn't as bad as they actually are.
Yeah,
they're bad. Well, I mean, they're not as bad anymore, but they still have a backup quarterback. Come on.
But if that would have been Iowa doing that, they would have dropped 10 spots.
Or anybody, yes, guarantee it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I had this argument with one of the guys that I work with. He's on the SEC side. I said the exact same thing. I said if Purdue beats Iowa this weekend, even though Purdue's 4-2, they would have the same record as Texas A&M. Iowa's going to drop out of the top 10. Or if Michigan State loses to Indiana, they're going to go probably below 15.
Yep.
So
it's like Fox Sports and ESPN. It's almost becoming like politics because, and not that saying one is Democrat or Republican.
I've
but
already told you.
One of them favors
what it is. Fox and ESPN. It's Nike and Adidas.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Adidas wants their people wearing their shoes and they're taking care of their people. Nike's got their guys in their shoes and they want their people. That's exactly how it is. That's why that argument last week about College Game Day not going to Iowa. Why? Why in the hell do they think they're going to promote a game on Fox? They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I get that.
Right. Well, and
they just can't say that they're unbiased anymore. They are what they are.
Yeah.
They almost have their own league. It's like the ESPN league and the Fox league.
Well, and ESPN, I think, is still pissed because the Big Ten signed that giant contract with Fox, and Fox gets Michigan, Ohio State every year. And that's the number one watch game almost every year.
It'll be pretty damn good this year.
I hope so.
All right, it's time to come back in.
You've always been there for me. You helped me count pennies from my piggy bank. You helped me pick out my first car. And helped me buy my dream home. And I know you'll continue to be there for whatever my future holds. Because you're my BFF. Banking friends forever.
Right now, get free checking with online banking. And all the products of big city banks with hometown service.
With First Federal, you can do that.
This segment is brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. Hey, make sure you visit our friends from Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. If you have problems or you know someone has problems snoring. Steve Green, former IU basketball player and dentist, and along with Brian Evans, will get you taken care of and get you the sleep you need. Reach out to aurorasleep.com. Man, some games this weekend that going to be kind of fun, especially if you like to wager $1 or $2 on them. I always say I'm going every week this week. I've said this year, all right, I'm going to bet some games this weekend. Do you know how many games I've bet this entire year?
Zero.
A big fat zero. I'll save you the trouble. A big fat zero. I just get busy and it's like, I'm not a big bettor anyways, but I'm like, all right. And all right, so Kentucky and Georgia. Number 11. All right. First of all, I can't imagine Kentucky as the number 11 team, but I think that they've got the wins, so they deserve their ranking. But they play El Numero Uno Giorgio. Saturday. It's a Saturday game. Where is that game taking place? Is that between the hedges?
I thought it was in Lexington. Let me check the Google.
No, they're
machine.
playing down. They're playing down in Athens.
They're playing down here. They're playing in Athens,
hedges, baby.
That's
And
going
of
to be
course, College Game Day headed to the SEC again for that. Just to point that out.
Well, again, as a what's the other big games? Where else would they go?
I'm not saying it's unrightfully so. Just to go off what we were talking about during the break about the differences between Fox and
Georgia's
ISB.
a badass team. Let me tell you, they're pretty good. So we'll see what that turns out to be. See what Kentucky can do. I don't see the spread on that one. That's not showing that one, so I have to pull up on some other ones.
that spread.
It's 22 or 23 points. I know that much.
20, right now, it's
Well, that's
22
right.
and a half.
Rick Bozich talked about that yesterday. Kentucky is ranked 11th in the country. They're undefeated, and they're a 23-point underdog. That's hilarious. I mean, that's something else? Has that ever happened? When's the last time that happened?
Well, I'll tell you, a couple weeks ago, Arkansas was number 8, Georgia number 2, and I believe the spread was 18.5 in favor of Georgia. Was a 18.5 point favorite, and I was very close to betting $5,000 because the way Arkansas was playing, I was like, "There's no way that it's going to be a 19, 20-point game." And thank God I didn't bet any money because Arkansas got their ass whipped 37-0. So
they've been tearing it up ever since. They've been stinking ever since, haven't they?
They just got beaten a shootout against Ole Miss. I think Georgia's clearly the best team in the country. Like as good as Kentucky's been, I don't think they have a chance. I think it's going to be a smoke show.
Oh, I agree. Do they cover the spread?
I don't think so.
There you go. That's the question. You don't think that Georgia covers the spread?
Oh, yes, Georgia. Yes, I do think Georgia covers the spread. I thought you meant does Kentucky stay within 21?
That's wild. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. UCF. This one's kind of funny. UCF at number 3 Cincinnati. These are two teams that just a couple of years ago were compatriots on the outside trying to look in, and Cincinnati is now saying, well, both of these teams actually will be joining the Big 12. So they're both going to be moving on up as the Jeffersons did, but Cincinnati is flying kind of high right now. UCF is going to have something to prove. And Cincinnati is just, I don't know why they just haven't. I think that they've gotten a little luckier, and I think you got to have luck. You have to have luck. But I think they've gotten a little bit more of their share of luck, which is fine. But they're not the third best team in the United States because, again, they should have lost to Indiana.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a fun game. I think that people are going to give Cincinnati, they're going to, peg Cincinnati as that 21-point favorite, but this is a feisty UCF team. Gus Malzahn, he'll have some tricks up his sleeve, I'm sure. They should have beat Louisville a few weeks ago. They blew that game, and then they lost a 4-point game to Navy. And Navy's such a unique team. I know they're not having a great season, but it's hard to defend that type of offense. So I think this is going to be a sneaky good game. It might be one of the better games we get this weekend, just because I think a lot of people are counting UCF out. And look, one of the things that we learned about Gus Malzahn is, 1 week he's going to disappoint you, the next week he's going to surprise you. He always did that at Auburn. He had a great record against Nick Saban. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an upset this weekend, and Cincinnati's playoff hopes are dashed on Saturday.
I would not either. We talked about the Indiana-Michigan State game earlier, but we'll talk about it again. One of the reasons is this turnaround, and you made the perfect example. They are the exact opposite now than how I viewed them coming in to the season, this game. But that's because of the change that Mel Tucker has made offensively, mostly for Michigan State. I think it said statistically they had from 2016 to 2020, they averaged 5 yards per play. And that was 121st nationally during that entire span. So under Mark Antonio, those last few years, they were just terrible.
Yeah.
This fall, they're 4th in the country, 7.5 yards per play, tied for 14th in plays of 20 yards or longer. They're explosive. Their offense is, you know what their offense sounds like? Oh, what Indiana was a year or two ago.
Yep.
Explosive.
That's
explosives.
Yep. That's the perfect example, perfect way to summarize it too, because they can get it done on the ground. They can get it done through the air. They use trick plays. They've been able to do it on special teams. They've just been outstanding on that side of the ball. They do have some question marks for me defensively. Maybe Indiana can take advantage, but again, I just don't think that Indiana is going to be able to score enough points to win this game.
Man, I agree with you, unfortunately. Cannot thank you enough, brother. Appreciate all your extra help today. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Look forward to you getting up to Bloomington so I can take you to dinner to repay that favor. But also big thanks, of course, to Chris Denari from the Pacers. And congratulations on their win. Matt Taylor as well, as he gets ready for another week of Colts football. And we'll be back tomorrow to do this all again for you guys. But big thanks to you all, and John, the producer, all of you guys. Thanks for putting up with my convalescing this week. It's not fun, I promise you, but I appreciate all the well wishes and the patience. But let's go out and have yourself a great day. We'll be back tomorrow to do this again. Thanks, guys. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.